Thanks very much. I'm Jamie McCutcheon, one of the principals from Genton, and we're going to be presenting Glenroy Station today. Just like to acknowledge the traditional owners across Australia on whose land we live, work and design, and in this case it's Wurundjeri. Glenroy, it's probably about 12 kilometres north of Melbourne. It's sort of situated in quite a quiet little area, but a very built-up sort of residential area, as you can see from around us. The actual site itself and the existing station was sort of wedged between these two retail streets. And this is an LXRP project, so it's a level crossing removal project. So the main focus on the project was to try and remove the level crossing at this area here to try and facilitate cross-connectivity through the site in a much better way. It's very difficult to get across this site in the existing condition. To the right of us, we have some important aspects where we've got the colleges, primary schools and specialist schools, and actually just another, there's a Western Glenroy Primary School just off the page as well. And one of the key features really is the lack of green space within Glenroy itself. There's a couple of little pocket parks around the site, but really the main green space within the area is actually unfortunately a private golf course in the sort of bottom right-hand corner. So that was one of the key drivers of this project, was how can we create a new station precinct but also increase public green space. This is the existing condition, very much a brownfield site. We did have some good existing trees on the site, none of them endemic to the site. There were some sugar gums, obviously indigenous trees, but certainly not endemic to this particular area itself. There's some really good key buildings around the site here as well that in future could be a really good catalyst for change. So that you can imagine the development of especially the Peter Gibbs stock feed area. He's been there since 1987 though, so it doesn't look like he wants to move anytime soon, but that area will become really quite valuable. You can imagine that industry moving on and the station being very much a part of that sustainable development. We also have the Glenroy substation, which is a heritage building. Now, it's no longer functioning as a substation, but it is heritage listed, and it's really looking for a new use as well. And it's another key aspect to this sort of, how do we use the station precinct as a catalyst for change for sustainable growth in the future. There's two key streets around the area as well, one in Post Office Place to the west of the site and the other one in Wheatshift to the sort of southeast. Now these two streets have been disconnected from each other, mainly because of the rail that runs through there. And these are the two kind of like quieter shopping streets and really have a beautiful sort of sense of what Glenroy is, a real sort of sense of community. The existing conditions, you can see that we tried to change. That was the only cross connectivity there was, apart from using the actual level crossing, which was a pretty undesirable underpass. The site itself was really just asphalt. You know, it's back in the days where cars ruled the world, I suppose. It's like, let's just put more and more car spaces in. And that's another key driver of what we want to try and change. The actual amenity of the station, really poor, sort of late 70s, just brick. There's no passive surveillance in these buildings. There's no sense of safety. And you can see on the right-hand side there, the actual dangerous level crossing. Trying to get across there in peak hour was absolutely undesirable. So what are our key drivers? Really about urban integration and vibrancy, connection to country, amenity and safety, and also creating a local identity. In terms of sustainability, we work as a really collective whole and holistically within our teams. So it's not just architecture, it's not just landscape and urban. It's very much about construction, it's very much about engineering, and we all have to work together. So we have weekly meetings from day one on this project all the way through to completion, and we go through a lot of rigorous testing as well. We used to use a Green Star testing, which as architects we're so much more familiar with, but now we've moved on to an ISCA, which is a lot more engineering and probably more relatable to stations. But I'll sort of unpack that a little bit later, how we've been able to bring some of those Green Star qualities into the actual building spaces themselves to make them all livable. But these are the three key drivers that we look at. It's materials and energy, climate resilience, and also livable communities. And from an architecture and urban design perspective, that third one is incredibly important for us. Just some of the key facts, I'll have to put my glasses on for this, I'm afraid, that we actually had on the site. Like we had a lot of reduction in project energy. We had a great idea of diverting, didn't have to divert much landfill from the site. We actually used a lot of the materials. You can imagine like a railway that's like 100 years old, the contamination of all that ballast and things that you have. We didn't go and put that into landfill. There's a way, well, can we reuse it in the asphalting of the new car parks? We're using subgrade. So we can be not taking that off the site and putting it in areas that, and the car parks in these areas as well are really good for future opportunities to redevelop. We have to put car spaces in now because we can't just cut the cars off because people won't use it. But hopefully in the future, when cars become less desirable, we can then regenerate more public open space and so forth. So you won't see any multi-deck car parks, everything is at grade. In terms of climate resilience, we had 40,000 square metres of open space recovered. Now, that, if you kind of imagine that rail line before, the open space that was there before was generally just grassed with non-Indigenous grasses that was mowed by council. We've very much taken a different attitude to that, as looking at an opportunity. How do we recreate Indigenous landscapes which will then bring Indigenous habitats? That was really important for us. This is the entire site. So this is sort of the implications of where we are, and I'm sure I can't use this mouse, but yeah, the actual station precinct that we're going to look at and unpack a little bit further is there. You can see how much more impact that we had by realigning the line and bringing the rail into a trench underneath the existing road. Once we started doing all the site investigations here, we actually found some endangered geraniums. Actually, they're thought to be extinct geraniums on the actual site that are only endemic to Victoria. So one of the key first things that ever happened here was, how do we protect these geraniums to start with? So the actual rail line through the design development was actually diverted, and I don't know if you've got OCD, but you can just always pick up the actual rail as it runs through Glenroy is not parallel. It's about 3 degrees off. And that's generally because if you move a little bit of rail here and you've got certain curvatures, it has impact a kilometre down the road. So these little geraniums became very important and almost a mascot for our project, because they were thought to be extinct. We found them, we were able to protect them on our site, but we were able to do more than that as well. We were able to reseed them and actually get them growing in St Albans as well. So we've actually increased biodiversity, not just on our site, but we've actually increased it and put it into other areas within the area as well. So now we have 2 areas where we can grow these geraniums and, you know, these sort of found objects again, and actually have a much better chance of sustaining them. I'll move on very quickly. I just want to go through some of the key urban aspects of this, what we tried to do. So really about us, it was about creating a walkable precinct. How do we really start to connect people through walking again, and active transport being the absolute priority through this area. So connecting the pedestrian streets, going through and really connecting the bicycle pathway. So we're creating this north-south connection now, and we're only 12 to 15 k's from the city. So with electric bikes and scooters, that's really accessible to so many more people to actually use active transport and not even need to use the sustainable transport like the rail and the new bus interchange that we put in there in the orange. The station precinct itself was put in the middle of that and really used as a 24-hour through link, which I'll get to. And then we created these 2 public spaces, one a linear park encouraging walking from Post Office Place to Wheatsheaf, and the other is the Western Forecourt, which is really a bookend to Post Office Place, and a new public space and what we like to call the College Green, where people can sit, have their lunch and really take ownership as a public space. So this is where the precinct plan ended up. There's a lot of passive spaces throughout the linear park, also gathering spaces, and there's also integrated art along the actual new Glenroy Road. But what were we really interested in? Trying to create a station entrance that became a positive through link and 24-hour through link. I know I'm running out of time, so I'll run through some of these spaces just quite quickly. The linear park, you can see where we've got to the landscape there. Some of the Western Forecourt images, the College Green public space, the bookending of Post Office Place, and then finally the station precinct itself actually being organised about creating passive surveillance and safety to create a sustainable environment. Is that at my time?
That's time if you wanted to wrap it up.
Okay, I'll just quickly wrap up quickly if I can. I just wanted to show you some of these spaces. So what's really important is that the station's being designed as a public space. So it's a priority public space that's 14 metres wide, which is very unusual in a suburban setting, and that is to make it owned by the public, encourage people to use it, and then the actual building on the right-hand side here has a lot of passive surveillance. We've got a lot of technology we've put into this that we won't get through today. But for us to create a really successful environment, it has to be about amenity safety and people wanting to use it and really take ownership of it. So even by creating the PSO on one side, it has passive surveillance of the bus interchange and the station, and then bookending, you can sort of see on the right-hand side, bookending with a kiosk onto the Western Forecourt and really creating that social interaction throughout the spaces. I'll finish there. Thank you so much.